If I understand your career, it started in journalism
Correct.
and then philanthropy and now education. Is
Yep.
that right? And has education been a through line across those, say, three chapters, broadly speaking?
Yes, it has in many ways. So for me, journalism came as a career option when I was choosing what to do in college, based on a value of curiosity, right? I'm very curious and I have this passion for learning.
Yeah.
And I felt like I couldn't choose one expertise area that I wanted to focus on at that point. So journalism felt like I can still keep learning about everything.
Yeah.
So I think education was there, but it was very much more concretely there because then I started writing about politics and moved into education. So I started writing about education, interviewing secretaries of education, visiting schools, sharing stories that were happening around education in Brazil. And then I didn't really adjust it to the culture of the newsroom. It didn't feel like a nice culture for me.
Yeah.
And these are the kind of things you never think about when you're choosing a career, right?
Yeah.
What is the culture in the workspace going to be like?
Yeah. I don't know if that we're taught to even think about that or, even know what to look for, what kind of questions to ask about the culture and the places that we work, as opposed to what's the job that feels like it connects to our dreams or passions.
What are the subjects you're good at school? And I was good at writing, so you should do journalism. Like it's reduced vision, I guess, of what it could be. And so for me, it was not a good match. And then I decided to transition, and I transitioned into philanthropy as a person of communication inside a foundation. So I was a communication coordinator, communication manager at a family foundation, but then ended up going through the executive path and became more project director, etc. at the foundation. That was very much focused on public education in Brazil. So we were trying to work with government in Brazil because we worked at the federal, state, and municipal level to change and improve public education at scale in the country.
So it was a systems change goal and approach, you would say.
Totally focused on the end goal of more kids being literate at the right age, more kids concluding middle school, learning at the right level, right? So we were, by focusing on what we wanted to change in the world, then we would come back and say, okay, so then what do we need to do? Which was an approach that taught me a lot and that shaped the way that I see how the social impact world should work, which is less about doing isolated programs, projects, and much more thinking systemically on how do we change, how do we solve that problem. So these are the lenses that I'm now bringing to global school leaders. And it's different because I'm learning and unlearning many things. Because I feel like it's always different to do that from an NGO perspective that needs to fundraise, from doing that from a philanthropic perspective, and an organization that has its own resources, right? I'm curious, how was the change for you? Because I understand that you went through the philanthropic world with Hewlett. And then you're now in a consultancy space, which can be very different as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that I'm at a point now where I can articulate a coherent story of my career that sounds much more coherent than it actually felt in practice. Like in the moment, it felt like I need a job and I want to do stuff that I think is interesting and that I'm good at, not necessarily how it fits into a broader picture of things. But if now I can say that if I were to summarize, like my personal focus and orientation in my career is like the study and design of human-centered learning environments, and started with the focus on young people, in school, and what are the conditions that young people need to learn and to grow into whole beings that care about each other, that care about the world, that ask critical questions about the world that we live in. Sort of with the idea that the way that we do school shapes who we are and who we want to be. And if we want a society where people care about each other, care about the environment, care about causes and issues greater than themselves, and also have the will and the enthusiasm and the kind of capacity to organize to create that world. You have to practice that, you know, and school can be such a place for that. And then evolved over time thinking, how do adults and systems learn in service of creating that kind of environment where all people can flourish and have options and choices that align with their life values, you know, and the ability to organize to create those options if they don't have them. And I say all of this not knowing how to make that happen at all. I think you have to blow up the system and, you know, tear everything down. And yeah, I feel like, what does that actually mean? You know, it was very, I think, provocative and inspiring. I remember feeling from myself and my peers, but it's, I think over time through my experiences working in education, I was an AmeriCorps member with City Year, 4th grade educator. I worked at the Hewlett Foundation in education. Now I'm at the Bridgespan group. I actually learned more about how do you actually operationalize changing systems and things like that. And so I think it's been more learning than unlearning, you know. And I feel like I'm still in that kind of learning orientation now, in part through, you know, observing and learning from leaders like yourself, you know.
Yeah, you're young. I think you're still in the learning curve. At some point, I think you need to start unlearning a few things. So that's great.
I'm not sure that I haven't unlearned anything. I think, you know, I came of age, so to speak, in the Obama era. Like President Obama was the first president I knew and actually recognized and
that is so interesting.
Actually saw as a change maker in any sort of like meaningful way. I think, you know, been taught to like look for like heroes and leaders, you know, whether it's President Obama or the elders in the civil rights movement and those sort of historical figures. And so I think it's not to devalue the importance of leadership, but I think I have unlearned what leadership actually is. And it's not the hero that's leading the charge and everybody follows behind them, you know, thinking of a leader and leadership as taking responsibility for what matters to you, you know, and you can do that in any position that you're in. And there are ways that you can, particularly philanthropy and others, you can create the conditions for more leadership to be the norm. And what do leaders need? They need the ability to build relationships with other like-minded people. They need the space to dream and develop a vision for new worlds, because you can't build something that you can't imagine or create. You need resources, of course. You need an understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve, but also the recognition that you can't just have one vantage point. It takes a vantage point of lots of people working at different levels. And like you could actually apply a framework to thinking about this systematically. And so I think in many ways it's complicated my very oversimplified kind of beliefs about how change happens. And also it makes it more real in a way. And there's a balance between like, once you know how it really happens, it's like, oh, when you see how far we are from things, it can often inspire a bit of pessimism or cynicism, but actually knowing that it's possible and that people are doing this makes me more optimistic.
No, I'm super optimistic as well. And what you have shared just made me think that there are some basic conditions, I think, that need to be in place for people to care about, like what you were saying much before on what is the education that you envision where people flourish and care about the other person, care about the environment, care about... This mindset needs some kind of basic conditions fulfilled also, I guess, for you to be able to be in this space. And I also think that the leadership that you are describing, where you need the horizon, that's how I heard it, like, right? You need to see things and you need to be able to, because I'm thinking a lot about this, I'm thinking about you need to be rested at some level. You can't be totally drained and exhausted and lead from that place. And I don't know if part of the systemic change that we need to make is also creating more of these conditions for more people to be able to take on those spaces, you know?
Yeah. I'm curious how you see that in practice for school leaders, given that you're leading an organization that is in many ways building the field of global school leadership. And I imagine it's a way to create a kind of microcosm of that, creating those conditions for, you know, leadership, for the conditions that support leadership, including rest, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. Kevin, this is such a dilemma because I feel like this is super important. School leaders, we at the organization, we try to elevate school leaders' voice and hear a lot about what school leaders are saying and bring that to the global education conversations. And they are saying they are exhausted. A lot of things they say is about being burned out by the administrative burden and the pedagogical instructional leadership role that they have to fulfill at the same time at the school level. And it is really a very hard job to be a school leader, right? Fun fact, my mom was a school leader and my grandmother was a school leader herself. So I kind of know
there's a legacy of school leaders.
Yeah, and you think you are going out, right, when you do journalism, and you just feel like, okay, I'm not being part of that. And then circles of life when you see you were back there.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it's such a hard job. And I don't know, I can't tell you that I feel we are doing enough to reduce the exhaustion of school leaders, especially because we keep asking more of them.
Yeah.
So also when I think about building capacity and creating more effective school leaders at scale, at some level, I am thinking about them doing more things, right?
Yeah.
So it's a contradiction.
That's the first word that came to mind.
It's a contradiction, and it doesn't have to be. That's how I see it. It doesn't have to be, because I also feel like that they are doing lots of things that they shouldn't be doing. One of the key things we talk about also is shared and distributed leadership. So that is maybe the best and more concrete thing that we are trying to help school leaders to develop to make sure that that's possible in their life. This new space of leadership, a more rested and spaciousness is possible, is by distributing leadership, right? So...
And can you say what that is, and how do you build a field that nurtures that kind of leadership?
Yeah.
Which I also, like, I think part of the theory of change is that if you have leaders that are rested and have the tools, the space, the resources to do their job, et cetera, that it has an effect that it supports young people in school-based environments who, you know, have a better, more flourishing education through their outcomes, et cetera.
So, role models, right? I think it connects to your point of not being heroes, like leaders not being heroes, because we can't expect, right, people to lead from that place.
Yeah.
So distributed leadership or shared leadership at the school level really looks like school leaders empowering teachers to do some part of the work that they need to do. In the best case scenarios, you would have like vice principals and deputy and all those structures, but in under-resourced contexts that we work in, like the global South countries, you don't have that all the time. But you can think about teachers as professionals that would carry on some of the leadership responsibilities at the school level. Students who would have a lot of agency and that could do a lot for the school by being engaged and participating in the school life. And that if school leaders are intentional in thinking how they distribute that leadership across the community, parents through boards and communities that they bring together, bringing the community around the school also to participate in the school life. So school leaders who are able to do that engagement, mobilization of other stakeholders at the school, they might be less exhausted in the sense that they don't have to carry all the responsibilities in their shoulders. It's distributed, and more people with her or with him are thinking and are working to shape the culture of the school, make things work at the school level, and hold people accountable, you know. So I think that's the main principle of it.
And so I think the question I have is I'm thinking about the kind of adage about how, you know, doctors don't necessarily take their own medicine, or like car mechanics often have cars that aren't running and things like that. So it's a question for you about how much do you feel like you're able to model the kind of leadership that you want more school leaders to be able to have and experience? From a rested perspective, but also a shared and distributed perspective and having that ecosystem of support around them too, to make the work easier.
Yeah. So this was one of the key reflections in that pivotal moment of COVID, maternity, and turning 40. I think this was one of the key reflections I've had in my life. Was like, I loved my job, and I was in an organization that I really admired, where I had learned so much and that I was doing so many interesting things. But I was very often exhausted. I have built myself in my career, like as a professional, in the workaholic mode, right? So, and I was super rewarded by that. I usually say that it's weird because it is a kind of addiction, if you will. Even the term is like workaholic. It could be like alcoholic, you know. But if you are a workaholic, no one in your family is telling you like, hey, you should stop. Hey, don't do that. You are doing something harmful to yourself. People were just saying, you are so amazing and so responsible, and she's being promoted, and she's doing such interesting work.
And it's for a good cause, and it feels good to feel like you're doing something meaningful and successful.
Because I couldn't, I knew from the start, right? I wanted to channel my energy to something that was going to do something good for the world. But still, it was draining me in many moments, you know. And I was even in an organization where we could talk about that and we could try to do things differently. And I think we evolved a lot. But also I realized that I was in a leadership position there. And the level of disruption that I felt I wanted, like I want to leave this workaholic life behind, you know, it was going to be hard to do it at the place where I developed it. You know, like where everyone knew me from that characteristic.
And you spent 14 years at the foundation, right?
Exactly. I was also curious to learn other things and really interested in the global space and what my local experience could bring to the global space. But I think that from a personal level, this was one of the reflections that I've made that also made me look for a different kind of life and work. And then this shift also allowed me to move away from São Paulo, which is a huge city with chaotic traffic, where with a kid it's always hard to manage your daily routine and take them to school and come back and all the things that you need to manage when you have a toddler. Be closer to my family that lives in this city that is not São Paulo, and have this support network that now allows me, for example, to be here traveling for 10 days. And of course, my husband, the father, is there with my kid, but also with a support system that allows us as a family to be more comfortable doing that. So some things that have changed, because now the work's fully remote, it allowed me to move away from São Paulo, for example. So I've been doing some of those things. I've been talking a lot about this rested leadership concept or practice. I like to think it's a practice, not a concept. Which is certainly not, it's a journey, right? It's not something that you land. Now I'm rested. It's like cyclical.
Just achieve it once, and it's a permanent state that you're in.
Perfect. So it's not permanent. It's a cycle. And sometimes you'll be more rested, sometimes you'll be less. But I think the great thing is being intentional and vocal about it. So I've been talking about this with my team, with my board, with people that I meet. And it's good for me also to be held accountable, you know, on how rested I am or how exhausted I am. And I try to incorporate practices. So I'll share something very personal. I think that also what connected me to this vision when after pregnancy and after giving birth was that for most of my life, not only was I was a workaholic, but I was living only in my mind. Right? So my body...
What does that mean, living only in your mind?
That your body is just here as a machine to make your mind work. Right? So it's not exactly a part of your intelligence and of who you are. It's just literally like what is making your mind function. So you're operating from a mental perspective much more than from intuitive, if you will, or a body intelligence perspective.
I was just listening to a podcast about consciousness and how much we do and don't know. And I forget the guy's name, but he was asserting that, one, we actually misunderstand the relationship between our mind and body, and that we actually feel and think through our bodies,
exactly.
And not just in our mind. And that our brains exist to maintain our bodies, not the other way around.
Yeah. Yes. So that's fantastic, because what made me realize that was getting pregnant, giving birth, and breastfeeding. And then...
Can't relate. I can understand.
You can understand, right? Because it's the most amazing thing that you're doing. And my mind, my brain was not telling me how to do anything. So it was not in control. My body was doing things...
This life-giving, nurturing practice.
Amazing things that it just knew how to do. So when you experience this kind of thing, you can't unsee. You know, like, okay, so my body knows that. What else should I be listening to? What else should I be paying attention to? That would be information that I think through my body. That's it, exactly. And it's very hard, I think, to explain sometimes this idea, but it's very easy to feel it. So I think that also brought me a lot of this, because if you are thinking more about your body, if you're living more in your body, you also start to hear the signs more. And to understand when you're super tired. So I think I was telling you just before we started this conversation, like that in this trip, which is a hectic week, that we need to do lots of meetings and we are away from home and jet lagged, how I'm trying to pay attention to how much I sleep, how much I eat, how much I drink water, which are basic functions of your body. But I wasn't paying attention to any of that before, I guess. So these small things help me practice a bit more of rested leadership. And to finish with the other part of your question, which was distributed leadership, I think I'm actually, so this part of rested, I'm learning. And I feel like I still have a long journey, because all the time I feel myself coming back to the trap of being a workaholic and exhausted. And I have to be very intentional and remind myself all the time. The other piece, I feel, is more natural to me. In general, it's more natural to women to have other people in your team supporting you, because you distribute responsibilities, but you distribute power. And the idea of distributing power always felt very natural to me, because I was never attached to it in the first place. This is, I think, how I lead more naturally.
I appreciate you sharing all of this. I mean, there are a couple of reflections I'm just holding right now. One is a very personal reflection about, I don't know if I've asked myself, am I feeling rested or not, like actually taking that stock and assessment of myself and my like work and the kinds of things that are easy to take for granted from taking care of your body and self perspective, but are just so important to continue to maintain and not lose sight of. I also think about the work that we do at Bridgespan, particularly with this initiative on field building for equitable system change. And part of the work, of course, is shining a spotlight on the work of field catalysts and system change leaders like yourself to help just bring attention to how important this work is, help funders to see the value of it. But also we do a lot of work trying to encourage, understand, and normalize best practices for being a field catalyst among field catalysts. And I'm reflecting on how I can imagine it's often we're asking leaders to do more, in service of impact and population level change, et cetera. And I'm just wondering if there's something actually missing about having the space to take stock. Like, how are you resting, in the space and position that you're in? Because that's such an enabler of all that you're able to do in your organization and for your ecosystem, et cetera,
Exactly. Precisely. It's an enabler. And I think about that from a perspective of, I realized that I actually can be more creative. I am much more present in conversations. I'm more grounded when I'm rested, when my body is like at this minimal level of functioning well. And so I think we can do greater things. And we can do it more, even the collective idea of it. I think you are more tuned into collectiveness when you are more connected to your body. The mind goes to the individual mindset and framework that we have for life right now that is so prevalent in our world, individualist. And I think the body reconnects us to nature.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for
really
the time.
Appreciate it.
I can give you a hug.